When I say the word island, what comes to mind? Turquoise waters, white sands, palm trees. There are some islands out there with such astounding features that even the most experienced world travelers look twice. From islands flooded by crimson tides and rainbow sands to a little landmass concealing the world's deadliest secret. So, join me on this whistle-stop tour around the strangest islands that you won't believe actually exist. Ball's Pyramid. Jutting out violently from the Pacific Ocean over 370 miles off the eastern coast of Australia, this remote spire of stone looks like the perfect lair for a supervillain. As menacing as it looks, this great jagged sea stack known as Ball's Pyramid is actually the eroded remnants of an old shield volcano formed about 7 million years ago. At a gargantuan 1,843 feet high, which is about 400 feet taller than the Empire State Building, it's the tallest sea stack in the world. While just one look is enough to give plenty of people vertigo, some crazy explorers have seen its mighty peak as a challenge. Despite being discovered back in 1788, explorers only mustered the courage to conquer this ominously steep sea spire in 1965. However, it would turn out that sheer height wasn't the strangest thing about this island. In 2001, conservationists discovered a colony of horrifyingly large stick insects gathered on a single bush 330 feet up the otherwise barren spire. For 70 years, the nightmare-inducing Driococcalus australis, nicknamed land lobsters and walking sausages, were thought to be extinct. While most conservationists rejoiced, I bet at least one of them was fighting the urge to set the entire island on fire. Okunoshima. Perched on the inland sea of Japan lies the island of Okunoshima, though most people know it by its well-earned nickname Rabbit Island. Though it's no more than 2.5 miles all around, this little landmass is home to around 1,000 floppy-eared feral rabbits. These unusual inhabitants have learned that visitors are usually a source of food, and hilariously swarm if they hear the shaking of tasty treats. Though it looks like the cutest place on Earth, Okunoshima has a strangely dark and mysterious past. Before it became a cotton-tailed paradise, the island was used to manufacture thousands of tons of poisonous gas during World War II. These facilities were kept so secret that the island was removed from all Japanese maps at the time. Some speculate that it was during this time the rabbits were brought to the island as test subjects. Sadly, experts report that these poor creatures were euthanized after the facilities shut down. So where did they come from? Another rumor claims several school children released a couple of rabbits back here in the 1970s, and ever since they've bred like, well, rabbits. Either way, without any predators on the island, along with a ban on hunting, the rabbit population has thrived in this super cute sanctuary. Nekoshima. Okunoshima isn't the only Japanese island inundated with furry residents. Dotted around the Japanese coast are 11 tiny isles which are home to thousands of incredibly cute cats. These are Nekoshima, or cat islands, for those of us who aren't too hot on the old Japanese. Back in the 1940s, many of them used to be well populated by busy fishing villages. Locals kept cats to hunt the island's mice, which would infest the boats and kill the silkworms the fishermen needed to make their nets. But as the industry sadly began to decline, so did the island's human populations. The cats, on the other paw, continued to thrive. Locals believed that feeding these four-legged friends brought good luck and fortune, resulting in a spike of friendly felines. Now, there are so many of them on some of the islands, like Aoshima, that cats can outnumber humans 6 to 1. The island's primary population may seem strange, but they've ended up bringing good fortune after all. By attracting cat-loving tourists by the boatful, business on the islands has picked up again. Looks like both the humans and felines on these islands will soon be turning into fat cats. Now, I want to do a quick poll. If you had the chance, which quirky island would you prefer to visit? Rabbit Island or Cat Island? For Rabbit, hop on over and hit that like button. And for Cat, prowl on over to that subscribe button. If you're anything like me and think they're equally adorable, then click both. Now, where were we? Christmas Island. From the name alone, you can tell there's something festive about Christmas Island. Not because it's home to a jolly red fat man, but because this little island hosts one of the most spectacular red and green displays in the natural world. Every year, the branches of this tiny island, located over 930 miles west of the Australian mainland, are completely awash with incredible crimson tides. While it looks like a bizarre Christmas miracle, these waters are actually brimming with the offspring of the island's infamous red crab. 50 million of these amazing crustaceans migrated to these same beaches weeks before, dumping their fertilized eggs into the sea to hatch. Then, through instinct alone, their offspring amazingly find their way back to the island. On the years where many of them survive their harsh ocean incubation, they swarm the verdant green shores in their millions. Then, they begin marching diligently toward their woodland home at the center of the island. They'll climb over rocks, roads, and even humans to get where they need to be. With that kind of determined Christmas spirit, I wonder if Santa would consider swapping out his reindeer for 50 million red crabs instead. The Rotating Island. The South American country of Argentina boasts some of the most amazing natural landscapes in the world, but there's one that looks positively alien. Hidden away in the swampy marshes of the Parana Delta, a large, almost perfectly circular island is surrounded by a tiny channel of clear water. But the incredible symmetry of the island isn't the strangest thing about it. According to a time-lapse of satellite images taken since 2003, the 387-foot disk is moving around the confines of its little lake. It was captured tracking along the edges of the water, shifting position every single day as if following a pattern. Many scientists assumed it was a man-made prank, but when they explored the area, they found no sign of any human interference. The exploration left scientists with more questions than answers. After all, how could such a precise-looking formation be natural? While the scientists were scratching their heads, several more, eccentric members of society claimed it must be a secret extraterrestrial entrance to an alien UFO base. However, a more down-to-earth observation compared the island's circular shape to those of ice disks. These staggering circles of frozen water form when a water current flows to one side of the ice, rotating it in a circular direction and eroding any irregular edges. Assuming these ice disks and Argentina's eye disk work based on the same mechanics, it's possible that a slow-moving current underneath the swamp is rotating the island, and in turn carving out the circular hole of the lake. While it's not a completely perfect theory, it does explain why Argentina hasn't been overrun by little green men in spacesuits yet. Migingo. Even though it's less than half a soccer pitch in size, the island of Migingo has some very big problems. It's situated just off the eastern banks of Lake Victoria, Africa's largest freshwater lake. Fish in these waters aren't just plentiful, but valuable as well, enticing would-be fishermen to try their luck living out on the island. The scarcely believable 500 people that live there have transformed the uneven, rocky dome into a corrugated iron shell, like some gigantic armor-plated turtle. While it looks ready to take on Godzilla, the little island has even bigger monsters to worry about. In 2004, the profitable fishing waters attracted ruthless pirates, causing both Kenya and Uganda to claim the island in order to defend it. But this sparked a conflict between the two nations over who owned the profitable island and its valuable fishing waters. Suddenly, Little Migingo found itself at the center of what locals started to call Africa's smallest war. Although Google Earth clearly shows that the island is in Kenyan waters, Uganda claims that snapshot is wrong and refuses to back down. As diplomatic as the argument is, it'd be much more entertaining to watch Kenya and Uganda fight it out with some real monsters Godzilla style. If they did, who do you think would win? Kenya's Killer Kong or Uganda's massive Muto? The World Islands. Not many people can boast that they have the whole world to themselves, except whoever lives here. Because when you zoom out, you can see this guy has bought himself a house on one of Saudi Arabia's world islands perched off the coast of Dubai. These 300 islands are made from 11 billion cubic feet of sand dredged from the Persian Gulf, constructed into an archipelago in the shape of the world map. Deposited over millions of square feet of coastline, the project was so vast, astronauts could track its progress from space. Each little patch of constructed land was then named after a country, so people who bought them could claim to own a piece of the world. Like billionaire Richard Branson, who offered to buy Great Britain back in 2006. Although you'd have thought he was rich enough to afford a less tacky suit for this photograph on its sandy shores. But as cheap as he makes it look, you would need million-dollar coffers to consider buying one of these islands. The cheapest starts at a cool $7 million, going up to an eye-watering $1.8 billion. Though it began construction in 2003, the financial crash of 2008 pushed the project's expected completion date back to 2020. But even now, these empty islands look like they're a world away from being finished. The Hidden Rainbow. The island nation of Mauritius is famous for the dazzling colors of its seascape, but believe it or not, there's actually more color at the heart of this little landmass. To the south, in a region called Chamarel, lies the stunning seven-colored earth of Mauritius. It's a blanket of ridged soils made up of the most unusual and vibrant colors. But these psychedelic dunes have even more mind-bending science behind them. You see, the entire island was once an active volcano site formed around 2 million years ago. Over the years, the basalt from these volcanic eruptions underwent a rare conversion process, slowly turning the hard rock into clay materials like iron and aluminum oxide. Unlike the hard black basalt that they came from, these minerals range in color from vivid reds and oranges through to brilliant blues and purples. Man, driving on this island would be like taking on Mario Kart's Rainbow Road in real life. Little Diamond. Far out in the treacherous waters of the North Atlantic Ocean lay the mighty Faroe Islands, a body of 18 gigantic volcanic landmasses claimed by the Kingdom of Denmark. But the smallest and arguably most majestic of these islands, known as Little Diamond, has an adorably curious feature: its own personal cloud. As moist air blows over its 1,358 feet peak, temperatures drop and the water in the air condenses into a lenticular cloud, covering its peak in a white fluffy hat. From afar, it'd be easy to confuse the mountain with a bowl of green jello topped with whipped cream. Although it looks like it could be a sweet retreat, the island is less than 1 square mile in size and is completely uninhabited. Not just because the weather in the North Atlantic is notoriously harsh, but because the island is lined by horrendously steep shores that take some serious skill to traverse. For that death-defying trek, I really hope the views are worth it. Vulcan Point. If the movie Inception were an island, you can bet it would be Vulcan Point. Instead of a dream inside a dream, Vulcan Point is an island inside a lake, inside a volcano, inside a bigger island, inside an archipelago, inside the Pacific Ocean. The mind-blowing little island is nestled in the crater of the lake of the Taal volcano, the second most active volcano in the Philippines. The volcano itself also sits on a lake of its own called Lake Taal, on the island of Luzon. In turn, Luzon is just one of the Philippines' 7,100 islands lying about 500 miles off the coast of Vietnam and China. That's one hell of a big picture. But if you zoom back in, there's something missing. Where's the lake at the heart of this crater? Well, as you may have seen recently on the news, the tall volcano erupted in January 2020. The eruption buried the surrounding landscape under several feet of volcanic ash, and the sheer heat of the eruption dried up every drop of the crater lake. But despite the devastation, Vulcan Point appears to have miraculously survived. Experts believe that the lake will be refilled by rainfall in a few years' time. But sadly, for now, this former dream within a dream is more like a waking nightmare. Sable Island. If you scan over the oceans 180 miles off the Canadian shores of Nova Scotia, your eyes might catch sight of a mysterious giant snake slithering through the waves. At around 26 miles long and just shy of a mile wide, I don't envy the fisherman that tries to hook that beast out of the water. But fortunately for them, it ain't no snake. This isolated, uninhabited crescent is a windswept sandbar known as Sable Island. It's formed on top of the ridge edge of a continental shelf, carved out by a glacier over 15,000 years ago. Since then, sands have built up on the ridge, raising it out of the water enough for grasses and even a lone pine tree to grow. Although very little can thrive in such harsh conditions so far away from the mainland, it has a surprising population of 500 wild horses galloping along its shores. But how on earth did they end up so far out at sea? The last time I checked, horses didn't have gills. While these windswept stallions aren't sporting any fishy features, their island origins are still something of a mystery. Some believe that they came from a shipwreck several centuries ago. Others believe they were stolen during Canada's Great Deportation and were put out to pasture where no one would find them. Well, however they got there, they've transformed the barren sliver of sand into an incredibly horsey haven. Jonsvatnet Lake. In the heart of the great nation of Norway lies a giant lake with a small otherworldly feature. From the northern shores, the perfectly domed island of Trøya resembles a bright green soccer ball that's been kicked into the water. However, at just under 200 feet in length, this deceptively small-looking island is about as long as the Lincoln Memorial Building is wide. Though it's not the shape or the size of this island that makes it stand out, but its location. Situated at the northernmost part of the huge 5-mile-long lake, a well-angled photo can make the verdant island look like the most secluded place in the world. Surrounded purely by fog and mirror-still waters, the desolate landmass could be an introvert's dream vacation or an extrovert's holiday from hell. How long do you think you could stay here without another soul for company? Underground Island. While most islands are situated in lakes and oceans, there's one subterranean exception that really undermines them all. Almost 400 feet below the earth, the stunning island of Salineturda is stunningly located in the middle of a gigantic disused salt mine. This brightly lit underground attraction makes up part of the largest salt mine museum in the world. It was excavated entirely by hand, dating back as far as 1271. For over 660 years, the colossal cavern was chipped away with nothing but elbow grease and pickaxes. Now it's been flooded with a small subterranean lake, surrounding a tiny but dazzlingly decorated island at its center. In the soft glow of all those lights, it looks impossibly impressive. I just hope they never experience a power cut. Runet Island. In the far-flung reaches of the North Pacific Ocean lies an island with a half-buried secret. Perched on the edge of the stunning Marshall Islands, the natural beauty of the Eniwetok Atoll is punctuated by the bizarrely shaped Runet Dome. It's a huge concrete structure that looks like a crash-landed UFO. However, there's nothing alien hidden inside this 18-inch concrete cap. It holds 111,000 cubic yards, or almost 34 Olympic swimming pools, of man-made radioactive waste. It was constructed back in 1977, after the remote islands had been used as a U.S. nuclear bomb site in the 40s and 50s. The equivalent of 1.6 Hiroshima bombs were detonated there every single day over the course of 12 years, blanketing the islands with irradiated debris. But when it was time for the cleanup operation, Congress refused to fund a comprehensive decontamination program. Instead, U.S. servicemen just scraped off the island's contaminated topsoil and mixed it with cement. They then dumped it into a 350-foot blast crater and sealed it up with concrete panels. Responsibility for the site was dropped like a hot, irradiated potato into the hands of the Marshall Islands government. They were, understandably, enraged by the decision, and even slapped the site with a horrifying nickname of the Tomb. Now, over 40 years on, the cracks are beginning to show, literally. Sections of the unlined tomb have started to break, threatening to release lethal radiation into the surrounding sea and soil. While the US has never formally apologized, the tomb has become a ticking time bomb in an otherwise radiant paradise. Floating islands. On a cloudy day over the brilliant blue seas of the Maldives, your eyes might trick you into thinking that the islands of this nation are floating. As amazing as that would look both above and below the waves, I'm sorry to tell you that these islands aren't floating. In fact, they're not even real islands. That's because the Maldives consists of a chain of around 1,200 coral reefs, which can range from almost 1 square mile in area to just a few feet across. As you can see, they're all grouped into circular clusters called atolls, which are the remnants of long-extinct oceanic volcanoes. When they exploded millions of years ago, the erupting lava hardened and slowly grew into an island. Then, as the centuries ticked by, corals and wildlife began to grow at their bases, forming giant fringing reefs. But while the corals thrived, the volcanoes started to sink beneath the rising sea levels, leaving barrier reefs in their wake. These corals continued to grow, eventually breaking down into sands and, in some cases, growing large enough to support wildlife. So, while they may not be able to float, they've certainly risen to the surface. Big Dong Island. There's no amount of sweeping beaches or crystal clear waters that can hide this Fijian island's strange and dirty secret. Just one quick look from above reveals that this slice of paradise is actually shaped like an island-sized love sausage, with magnificent gonads to boot. This phallic 42-acre island can be found bulging off the northern coast of Vanuatu, flopping over the top of the Fijian archipelago. Although the island is endowed with plenty of exotic trees, flowers, and wildlife, its full girth has been developed into 87 luxury real estate lots, ranging from $75,000 to $125,000 per slice of seafront heaven. I'm sure the stunning views gave these buyers a lot of bang for their buck. Gaiola Island. At first glance, Gaiola Island off the coast of Naples looks like it was plucked straight out of a Salvador Dali painting. The two tiny Italian islets are connected by a single, impossibly thin stone arch that looks about as sturdy as a tightrope. But this bizarre bridge isn't the strangest thing about Gaiola Island. An aura of misfortune haunts its past, meaning the grand-looking mansions built on its peak have been long abandoned. Its cursed reputation began back at the turn of the 20th century, when its owner, a Swiss man named Hans Braun, was found brutally murdered and wrapped in an old rug. Tragically, his wife died shortly after, drowning at sea. The next owner, a German named Otto Grunbach, was found dead after suffering from a fatal heart attack during his stay on the island. And the owner after that, writer Maurice Yves Sandoz, took his own life in a Swiss mental hospital after going insane. But the curse didn't stop there. It dragged subsequent owners to economic ruin and saw many of their relatives reach untimely deaths, the most famous of which was oil tycoon John Paul Getty. In a particularly gruesome turn of events, his youngest grandson was kidnapped by the Calabrian Mafia. They forced John to pay the $3 million ransom by hacking the boy's ear off and sending it to him in the mail. The island was last owned in 1978, and since then, people have finally taken the hint and left it well alone. Clearly, this beautiful island does not want to be owned. But was such a brutal curse really necessary? I'm sure a giant Do Not Disturb sign could have done the trick. Manyuriki Island. Although you may not have heard of Manyuriki Island before, there's a chance you've already seen it. This uninhabited and mystical landmass is part of the island country of Fiji. It's volcanic in origin, measuring less than a mile long and almost 2,000 feet wide, and is completely surrounded by an incredible coral reef. With its azure tides, blue lagoons, and incredible greenery, you might think that it wouldn't be such a bad place to get stranded. Well, surprisingly, one famous face has already been there. You see, Manyuriki was the setting for the 2000 film Castaway, starring a shipwrecked Tom Hanks and a very unfortunate volleyball called Wilson. Before the film's international success, the island was little known and had no map-worthy features to speak of. But now, it boasts a dedicated Castaway Island beach which attracts fans from all over the world. Not of Tom Hanks, but of Wilson. Who knew that a 16-time award-winning actor could be outshined by a volleyball? Which of these islands did you think was the strangest? And which one would you most like to visit? Let me know down in the comments below. And thanks for watching, guys.